Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of that Gang Stalking Show. I'm your host and T.I. Doug. Been so since 2004. I'm looking up some jams real quick. On this episode, I'm going to be talking about going off the grid. I had a conversation with another YouTuber, but before I get to that, let me see if I can find something here real quick. With another YouTuber about going off the grid, and he talked about, well, you know, they follow me everywhere I go. I know I left one time and they were able to follow me. I just love this song, and this is going to be the theme for this video. Fight the power!
Refuse to fight. Matter of fact, it's safe to say that they would rather switch than fight.
Chuck D! Flavor Flav, you know what time it is. Yeah, you know what time it is. If they're stalking you relentlessly, should you pack up your shit and get the fuck out of Dodge? That is going to be the theme of this episode. In 2006, I worked at two different nursing homes. One was in Tyler, Texas. I've already told many stories about how the CNAs every night would receive text messages, either text messages or they got one of those Facebook notifications going, hey, it's time to fuck with Doug. And they would start reading morbid themes that had to do with homosexuality, and that's what the scripting was all about. I'm not going to get into that. I will talk about that I will talk about it later, but I left that job after some serious workplace mobbing, and I laid out of nursing after that for 6 weeks, just collecting my thoughts, going, what the fuck is going on? I was like, why are these people giving me so much shit? I didn't know it was gang stalking. I didn't know what it was at the time. The only thing I'd do is get on my shitty laptop that probably had half a gig of memory and go propaganda. That's all I looked up. And I couldn't find anything that would lead me to gang stalking, call stalking, proxy stalking, and all that other stuff. And once I found that, it just opened everything up. And then I was keeping a journal of every time I got mobbed, harassed, or even times that I thought I did, and I would write it down. I don't know if this was really mobbing, but today I went home and I smelled like a sack of shit. I was in the grocery store shopping, and as far as I know, I wasn't being followed, and this is what I'm writing down. And then all of a sudden when I get in my car, I notice something that smells like a dead fucking animal on a 100-degree day laying on the fucking side of the road in a ditch, upside down armadillo, just stankin'. Well, it's happened to me twice. Somebody got up behind me and they put the spray, and it's a death stink or something like that, and it really pissed me off. And all I got to say to people like that is, you're a fucking coward. Come up to me. If you got a problem with me, you could probably kick my ass, but I'm going to stand up to you, and I'm going to get a good I'm going to get one of them in on you. So I left the job. I took about a 6-week hiatus, and I went to a nursing home in Chandler, Texas, which is about 15 miles away from Tyler, and I worked for about 3 weeks, and I had a 2-week grace period where everything was sweet, and then they all turned sour on me, and the entire staff, except for the administrative staff, started mobbing me at work and doing the scripting thing again. I went home, I got all my shit, I threw away what I couldn't fit in the back of my 1985 Ford F-150, and I dropped the key in the office rent drop box, and I just left a note. Sorry, I had to break my rent. Shit happens. And so I proceeded to Austin. I had lived in Austin previously with a group of kids that I knew growing up. And in our particular town, we grew up in Russ, Texas. There is no employment except to work at a Russ State Hospital, and that's it. We went to Austin. I knew Austin, and then I said, you know, I'm going to go to Austin. I know the streets down there. I know how to get around, and I'm not telling anybody. I didn't tell anybody, but I made a fatal mistake. I forgot that the stalker, who I know, knew somebody that I knew, and this person told me previously, a long time ago, I got a friend that works in the DPS, and I totally forgot that. And what happened is after I got down there and found a job, like in 24 hours, I was looking in the paper, and you can move to Austin. You don't have to, go sign a contract to live anywhere. You can just go look in the newspaper, and there's people who buy homes all throughout Austin solely for the purpose of renting them out to get you to pay their mortgage off. So in 20 or 30 years, once it's paid for, they'll own the property. And so I met a lady down there in her 60s, and she goes, you can rent a room. There's 4 other guys down there. It's a big house. You got your own room, cable, everything that you could want. And the rent was cheap. And I didn't have to sign a contract, didn't have to put down my information or anything. And so I thought I was good to go. I thought I was going under the radar. I thought I couldn't be tracked. I wasn't thinking about a skip tracer. Skip tracers can find you, especially these days. But had I done it, if I were to ever do it differently and do it all over, I would do it differently. When I did have my address changed on my driver's license to update my driver's license, I should not have done that. I should have hung around Austin for several months and scoped it out to make sure I wasn't being followed, because immediately within 72 hours of changing my address at the Department of Public Safety, they found me. And when they found me, they started mobbing me at a place I was working at called Austin State School, where I was a medication nurse. And that was the only place they really ever mobbed me. I was an agency nurse, and I would get calls all the time. Hey, Doug, you want to go work here? You want to go work there? We got hospice open. We got, what's the hospital down in Austin? Brackenridge. I used to work med-surg in Brackenridge. But those things didn't always come up. The best meal ticket I had was Austin State School, and they were paying me like $30 an hour to work. And then if they called me 15 minutes late, a late call, I'd get $35 an hour. And then on top of that, I got time and a half overtime, which is $45 an hour. And when I was making a killing, and I was going to get set up and then establish myself in Austin, and then I was going to deal with this person that I owed money to, but they wouldn't let me get settled. They found me out, and I had to pack up and leave in the middle of the night, because I was literally working at a facility where I was there for 2 or 3 weeks, and everything was great. The staff that worked under me, they didn't give me any problem. But after they found out who I was and they tracked me down there, they started running scripts on me again, and the staff turned from a bunch of, I thought was nice gentlemen, they turned into thugs. They went from talking about sports, football, and everything, women, and then they started talking about murdering people and killing people. Every fucking shift that I would come on to work at this one particular unit. And you always, if you're getting called to go work at an agency as a nurse, you always work at the same place usually, because that place, nobody wants to work there. At the time, Austin State School could not pay a competitive nursing wage, so nobody wanted to work for them. So I always worked at this one particular unit, and after about a week, these guys that were mental health techs, they turned out to be gangbangers. And they were talking about how to murder people. They would say, this is how we do a drive-by in my set, man. We'll sit in an SUV for like 8 hours. We'll play video games, watch DVDs, and we'll keep an eye on our mark. And then, when it's time to go, we just, get our gats and and then we drive off. And then we're saying shit like this left and right. And I guess one of the guys kind of got paranoid of me and suspicious. He knew that I was the TI and that I was the person he was supposed to be saying this in front of. But something I guess I was doing, the way I was carrying myself, made him believe that I might have been with the FBI or something like that. And I overheard him one time going, dude, he was telling other guys, I think we need to watch what we're saying, man. I think this place might be bugged. And then another time I came to work, and one of their homeboys came to visit him. He was dressed in total gangbanging attire, and this guy was like 6'5". He looked like that big Indian dude that played on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson. And he was this big, tall guy, and they were talking to him, and then they pointed to me, and he turned around and he looked at me, and he goes, and my fucking gut just sank. Scared the shit out of me. Wouldn't bother me today because I've been through it all so many times. It just doesn't faze me anymore. But at the time, I was new to it and I was running from it. So after that shift ended, I went home, packed my shit, I cashed my check, I went to the agency and I said, you got to take me off the schedule. And they go, we can't take you off the schedule. We promised that you would be there for the next 2 weeks. And I go, I got to go. They go, what's the problem? I go, I got to go. And they were mad. They were really mad. But I got in my truck and I left. But before I left, one of my roommates started acting suspicious. He's like, where are you going? Why are you leaving? What town are you going to? And I'm like, I'm going home. And he goes, where's home? And I go, it's in East Texas. Where at in East Texas? I mean, he was just being intrusive. And the guy was not like that before. So if I had it all over to do again, I would use the internet, but I would not use my home phone. I would not use a cell phone. I would not use the computer. I wouldn't use anything in my house. I would go to the library because I know that even though I'm running Linux on my system, it still potentially can be hacked by a really, really good hacker. But if I had Windows, I know it could be hacked by just what they call a kiddie hacker. Some kid that's running Kali Linux can just pop your Wi-Fi, get right into your computer. So if I had it all to do over again, I would totally just skedaddle. I would research it online. There's all kinds of websites devoted to going off the grid or how to completely disappear. There's no point in me naming the websites. Just go to the library and look for it. Don't look for it on your phone or your computer if you plan on doing it, because you're going to tip them off that you're planning an escape. And if you're really being harassed and monitored, they're like, well, we'll have to follow him. But the thing about following you, they can follow you. But the whole thing about it is that costs money, time, resources, and people. And I don't know about the government doing these things. A lot of people say the government are, and I guess government officials have the money to do it. But I know in my case, my proxy stalker has the money, but I would make it very hard for him if I were to ever do it again to drop off the grid. Like I said, you can rent a house or an apartment, anything without signing a lease, letting them know any more than your first and last name, not signing any paperwork. In some cases, you may be able to live in an apartment, a one-room apartment, not attached to their home, and in a garage somewhere in exchange for doing work. I did that in an apartment that I lived at one time, and it was just total, handshake. Okay, I'll paint this place. If you knock off $100 a month for rent, didn't sign a contract, I painted it. My electricity was paid. Electricity wasn't even in my name. Only thing I had to do was turn on cable, but they knew I was there anyway. But I'm just saying there's situations that you can get into where you don't have to leave a paper trail or a digital trail about you. You can work odd jobs if you got money saved up, you're a banker or you're a stockbroker or something like that, or just the average Joe working at a Whataburger or a Dairy Queen or a hamburger joint. You can skip town in the middle of the night. Don't tell anybody. If you forward your mail, just send it to a friend or family member. Just tell them, you got to trust me. I'm leaving town. I don't want you to know where I'm going, and I'll contact you when I want you to know I'm coming to get my mail. And that's it. And come in the middle of the night and disappear again. There are ways to do it not to be found that are legal, and I suggest that you do it in a legal fashion. Just research it, go to the library and do it. Don't do it on your computer or your cell phone. I talked with, who is this gentleman? This is Gang Stalking Victim 1 on YouTube, and we've been talking back and forth. I said something about, I don't believe the government's behind it, but I misstated that. I do believe there are corrupt government officials who are doing this. Government workers. I worked in city government at the city of Tyler one time, and I left the job because I was wasting the taxpayers' money, because all I would do from 8 to 5 is get on the computer and play around on the internet. That's it. I'd say, hey boss, you got a job for me? Not today, you're just gonna have to wait. I'm gonna get into that. Okay, Gang Stalking Victim 1 replies, it is the government. In my case, before I ever saw a stalker in civilian clothing, I had cops stalking me. Next came regular, non-uniform stalkers. I've been stalked in over 5 states. I've had people stalk me 500 miles away. The only way this is possible is because the government or the police is behind it, organizing it. He says it's hard to completely get off the grid without a Faraday cage. I suspect that the technology uses something like radar or satellites which can pinpoint any location. I think the only way to escape it is build a good Faraday cage wherever you live. The thing about Faraday cages, I've read some of these things online. It's not my experience, so I can't say, yeah, I know about it. I don't know about it. It's hard for me to wrap my head around, and it's hard for me to believe, but that's not saying I don't believe it. I know that when I try to tell my stories of gang stalking to friends and family, they don't believe it. They just don't think that it's possible that anybody would spend any effort and time harassing me. So I quit telling people. Now I'm telling the world through YouTube. I'm reaching the entire planet. Look at my analytics: Finland, UK, Europe, South America, Wales, New Zealand. Everybody out there is getting stalked like this. As far as building a Faraday cage, the thing that I have with the satellite technology targeting people, this is my argument. Edward Snowden. I just watched an interview a couple weeks ago where Katie Couric interviewed him, and he's living in the Soviet Union, probably somewhere around Moscow. And Katie asked him, "Are you being followed?" And he's like, "No." "Is anybody harassing you?" "No." "Do they know where you live?" He goes, "I don't think so." He's not a disturbed individual. People who are being stalked by the government, the NSA, CIA, local police, the Stasi, whatever you want to call it, or just low-level gang stalkers, they're being harassed, and you can see it. It's written all over them. Snowden's not, and he is a big fucking target. Why is it other people complain that they're being targeted when they have no intelligence to give the government? Why? I know why I'm being targeted. This is revenge in my case. But so many people out there say, it's the government coming after me. My point is, why are they coming after you? Sure, I can float the idea of testing technology, but can't we test it on ISIS? Can't we test it on the Taliban? If it was so good, why did we have to send SEAL Team 6 in for killing Osama bin Laden? If that satellite technology is so good, why couldn't they just fry that motherfucker from space? Why couldn't they tell him through satellite technology, "Osama, this is God, this is Allah, and I'm telling you to surrender yourself to Obama. Do it now, or I will strike you down by my hand." In fades Metallica. "Die by my hand. I'm creeping death." That is what satellite technology. Need to reboot. That is what satellite technology is. It's creeping death. I'm just saying, and I'm not making fun of anybody or anything like that. If it's that good, why don't they use it for what we think its intended purpose is, instead of targeting regular everyday Joes and Janes? A Faraday cage. What kind of weapon do you need a Faraday cage for? If it really doesn't relate to me, I'm not going to look it up. I've been hit by what I think is microwave technology or voice to skull. Excuse me, I've talked about it in previous videos. I've even had people, the operators of the perps, try to make me think that they're reading my mind, but they never actually read my mind. They would plant like a jingle in my head, like there's this jingle from back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s about a Slinky toy. And it's just a cold spring that kids back in our days, before technology was like it is now in video games, if we had a stick and a rock and a mud puddle, we had something to do all day. If we had a little stupid $2 Slinky, we could play with that. Just let it walk down the stairs. And the Slinky jingle went something like that. Everyone knows it's a Slinky. And I'm working in a Pizza Hut, and I hear that jingle. February 2009, and then I get off work, and I go home, And as I'm walking home, I get a text message, and I'm like, a text message? I don't text people. People don't text me. I'll look at it, open it up. It's a Slinky. Oh my God, they're reading my mind. Let's say this, folks. That night, old Doug had a hard time getting some shut-eye. I was, how can they fucking read my mind? Well, I tell you how they can read your mind. They either used the audio spotlight or they used voice to skull, microwave, whatever, and they did it at low levels to where it wasn't just blurring in my head. Because I've heard shit blaring in my head before, and I knew I'm not hallucinating. Someone's talking to me. There was one time when they were using this on me, and they were trying to do some hypnotic shit on me. And they were playing this weird music in the background. And I was like, damn, man, this is some boring ass shit. And then all of a sudden, I hear a guy blurt out, I just don't have any fucking time for this bullshit. I'm working on my fucking master's degree, and I don't have time to be spending my fucking night watching this fucking jerk all fucking night long. Then it goes back and just some hypnotic music. And what that was is I was laying in the back of my truck. I locked myself out of my apartment, and I'm not going to get into the whole story, but the long story short, I was waiting to get back in my apartment the next day when my landlord was around, because I didn't want to bust the door open. I could have. So I went in the back of my truck, laid down, and then the DPS was about 50 yards away from me, and they kept an eye on me all night long from another parking lot. And the DPS, those guys have got a shit ton of work to do. I mean, they're busting DUIs, drug bust, the whole 9 yards. And for some reason, the guys in Cherokee County didn't have anything to do that night, or someone bribed them or paid them off or whatever. And the guy who was doing this, who had the technology to aim it at me and use the device, and I've seen the device, not that very same time, but I've seen a device that I explained in a different video, which looked basically like a box with a dial on it, kind of like the kind of dial on a light switch to dim the lights, and it was like a lime glowing yellow with a hint of green in there. If you want to know more about that, just go back and look at one of my videos, microwave hearing device, voice to skull scene. And anyway, I heard that and I'm like, wow, it's weird. But my thing with satellites is I've installed satellite dishes, and for a satellite to be able to track you, it has to be aimed at you. We've got satellites aimed at the Middle East that are specifically used to target ISIS and Al-Qaeda. But to target somebody in the United States, that satellite's got to move around and whatnot. And I just don't think that they've got a lot of fuel on board to be always making all these extra adjustments to find old Doug roaming all around the East Texas hillside or all throughout Texas. Because installing a satellite dish, you know that if you're aiming your dish and you get it a millimeter or two off, you'll get static. You got to be dead on to that beam. So my problem with this, and I'm not discounting or discrediting anybody, but I just can't wrap my head around it, because that beam has got to shoot directly from space at a certain angle just to hit you. And once it's hitting you, what's it tracking inside of you? Do you have a tracking device? Your brain signals cannot be tracked. If they could, Edward Snowden, his ass would have been, he'd have been caught a long time ago. Osama bin Laden, they would have got him a long time ago. This is just my argument. I don't know. I've even heard that a Faraday cage tested like even 30 feet underground, it's not all that great. So I don't know what I would do. If it was happening to me, I would pack my shit up and I would go off the grid. I wouldn't tell anybody. I would take my smartphones, glue it to the back of a semi, and make sure the battery's charged, and let it go off on the interstate, and maybe possibly give me a break from the perps that are following me, and so they'll go follow that semi thinking I took off, and I'm go shoot in the other direction. I would dump all my cell phones. I would not only dump them, but I would take the hard drive and I'd destroy it. I'd also take my computer, I would sell it on eBay, keep the hard drive, and then maybe put a couple of bullet holes in the hard drive and toss it in a lake to where it can't be read. If the perps or the government was coming after me, I don't know what kind of information they get on there, but you just don't want people digging through your trash, folks. And another thing is your trash. People, if you're planning to escape, go to the library and research it. Don't do it on your computer or your cell phone. You got to be ready to get rid of everything and just do the best you can with little of nothing. If it was happening to me on that level, that's what I would do. Right now, I'm not being harassed, but if I was, I wouldn't run from it. I know who's doing it. I've got an attorney. I advise you to get an attorney and go talk to him, because no matter who out there that's not listening to you, your family, your friends, or anybody, an attorney will listen to him. Listen to you. Don't say I'm being gang stalked. Use that term later on. Tell him that you're being proxy stalked. And you go, okay, I know all about that. Yeah, I've dealt with it, and it's hard to prove, but you just got to keep collecting evidence and submit it to me, and we'll work with it. And as soon as I think we got something to fly with, we'll prosecute this bastard, okay? That's the end of the show. I tell you what, write me on YouTube, comment on my videos. If you want me to do a show on something, talk about something. If I'm misinformed, inform me. I mean, but don't say, I don't like your show because I disagree with you. That's wrong, people. That's not right. I don't throw a book into a burn pile just because it was a bad book, you know. Whatever. GoFundMe account, That Gang Stalking Show. I've received a total of $0. There's 370 something people in there on GoFundMe, and they're victims of gang stalking, and one person's got $5 raised. Nobody gives a shit about us. All I need is some good equipment to edit videos, to lease equipment and do tutorials on video surveillance, gathering information on perps and whatnot. My Facebook page is Gang Stalking Central 101. No, it's That Gang Stalking Show at Gang Stalking Central. Twitter is, I don't know a fucking thing about Twitter. It's Twitter at Gang Stalking 101. That's the end of the show. Like, subscribe, comment. Let's get the word out there, people. Let's bring an end to gang stalking. Bye.